Welcome. I'm Ron, your APAC account executive here at Staffbase. I'd like to start by acknowledging that our team here in Sydney is on the land of the Gadigal Nation. We pay our respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples joining us today. Today, we're gathered to delve into an exciting and insightful discussion focused on the synergy between Microsoft 365 and the front door intranet. These are tools that can significantly enhance how you manage your internal communications. To guide us through this discussion, we are joined by two distinguished experts. Firstly, we have Peter Malozzi, our Principal Strategy Advisor at Staffbase. Peter brings extensive experience and a deep understanding of internal communications, making an invaluable guide for today's discussion. Joining Peter is Daniel Anderson, Microsoft MVP. Daniel's broad knowledge of MS365 will be instrumental in helping us explore how to optimally integrate and leverage this platform alongside the front door intranet. I'm confident that the insights shared today will empower you to take your internal communications to the next level. And without further ado, let's dive in. Over to you, Peter and Daniel.
Sweet. Thank you very much for the introduction. And let's get into it. So it is a super exciting time, we think, for intranets. A lot of new concepts, a lot of different tools, a lot of different stakeholders getting increasingly involved in the world of intranets. And so we are going to talk about a few topics today. First, we're going to kick off with some trends, some good old emerging themes and ideas around the world of intranets. Then we'll get into a little bit more detail about the front door intranet concept. Finally, we'll go into different scenarios with Microsoft 365, including an overview of very up-to-the-minute bleeding edge from Daniel about the latest and greatest coming from the Microsoft tools. And then we'll take questions. And of course, we'll have an eye on the comments as well along the way and take your questions there. If you want to test out the comments box, go ahead and let us know where are you joining us from. I am joining you from Brooklyn, New York, my apartment. So it's so great to be here, and we'll go into the trends first.
Alrighty, I'll take this one. Well, I'm joining you from Melbourne, Australia, where it's actually very, very chilly. So welcome everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon from wherever you are joining us from. As Peter said, jump into the comments, let us know where you're coming from. But top three trends, obviously intranets are still more relevant than ever. And you can see on the screen here, that we've got some interesting statistics here and some interesting things from some data that Staffbase have brought to the table here. So, obviously being able to reach people and reach non-desk workers is something that is very front and center and front of mind of most organizations and needs to be part of your internal communication strategy. And intranets really do play a huge part of that. So being able to create more reach from the content that you create as an internal communication team or somebody that is responsible for getting the message out there to everybody, regardless of whether they are office-based or at home or out in the road or wherever they are, creating that reach for your content is super important. And we talk a lot about, Peter, meeting people where they are. So being able to create a piece of content or create a message or a story or share some insights or, policies or those type of pieces of content, we want to make sure that as an organization that you do cater for different people and different ways of working. There's obviously more, as we know, the distributed workforce and the makeup of where people work these days shouldn't be a barrier to be able to allow people to consume that content. So having the ability to really craft and your message and meet people where they are or where they choose to start their day or choose to work is something that really, really is important. And you can see from the second bar there about whether people are actually reaching them, you can see a majority, in the stats there, 26.5%, sort of 23.5%, sort of 4 and 5, that it is a bit of a pain point for people, right? Being able to reach people, especially if they're not in front of a computer, is a challenge and something that needs to be thought of in your planning around your intranet and your internal comms strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just add that, part of why it's a trend is because this actually reaching them thing is something that's easier to do with some of the technology that's out there, and increasingly easy with the technology that's emerging. So, further to this point, and very relevant to this point, is the global mobile traffic. So you know it from carrying one of these things in your pocket. In the West, smartphone penetration reached 80% of adults in something like 2016. So at this point, although you're going to have, of course, some employees who don't have a smartphone, the number of them that do have a personal smartphone is going to be tremendous. And what this chart shows is that the share of traffic is going to be coming through that phone, like most of the traffic. So this is a great example of the change in the world and the change in the technology that precedes, right, to the prior chart that we saw of actually reaching them. So now that the tech exists, we've got to figure out together how to actually do this for all organizations and reach all of our workforces.
It's funny you mentioned the mobile workforce. Even when people are working at home in front of a computer, they've still got a mobile device as well. So I quite often find myself using an intranet, not on my desktop, even though I'm sitting at a desktop, but still using the mobile phone. So having that the capability to be able to have both platforms is definitely a trend and definitely needs to be thought about.
Absolutely. Okay, so that gives us our trend one for today, which is generating more reach for communication. And a big part of that is through the technology and, of course, the practices that you need to actually get the technology working and get it reaching people. Okay, so as a way into our next trend, I wanted to share this post. This is a post of the previous, I believe, Volkswagen CEO. And you can see he's posting on LinkedIn, and he's posting on LinkedIn to his own employees. So this is a tremendous example of maybe a surprise that you wouldn't expect, but is very much a real thing in today's world. This explosion in the diversity of channels and ways that you can reach people means that you get things like leaders actually communicating even internally on more public channels. And that comes with advantages like reach, but it also comes with risks. And so we just wanted to show like a few of the dizzying array of different channels that are out there. And the internal communications teams that I talk to week in and week out, they tell me that this is like a big part of their world that, it's a complexity that they have to navigate. And, this question of channel ownership, you're dealing with a world where you don't own all the channels. You might not even have an employee app, for example, or an employee magazine. But even if you did, you might not even own the intranet channel as the IC team. But you're certainly going to have other channels beyond that that are important for reaching people that you do not own. And that creates a challenging dynamic for internal communicators who, in the best case, would love to own all the channels that they need to reach people. But further to the first trend, in service of actually reaching people, we're willing to go to these lengths of using channels that we don't own. Yeah. So over to you, Dan.
Yeah, and I think the value, or trend two, the value of channels, right? So if we're talking about the Microsoft 365 ecosystem and where people start their day, so we need to traditionally from an intranet and a comms perspective, you'd fire up your browser and intranet would load in a browser and that type of thing. Everybody would start their day there. But we've seen, the proliferation of Microsoft Teams, for example, or, mobile apps, people start, or even Outlook. I know, there was lots of talk about Teams and, that technology killing email and that type of thing. I mean, we're never going to get away from email as a communication platform, but we need to, and you need to start to think about being able to facilitate communication and meeting people. People start their day in different ways. I might start my day in Teams. You might start your day in Outlook. Somebody else might open their browser up, as the first thing that they do when they start their workday. So this trend and these channels, being able to have, a distribution model to be able to distribute that content to different channels is, again, a trend that we're seeing quite more and more. You spoke about the mobile workforce before, so it's really important to have that channel as something that you can reach those employees on. So this trend of publishing once and then distributing to multiple channels is starting, if not already, is starting to become a huge trend, and something that is a requirement that I'm seeing anyway, being able to from organizations, that's, if we're talking about building an intranet or deploying an intranet or creating some type of communication platform, then that is definitely starting to become a must-have scenario for many organizations.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I'm seeing too, Daniel. And it's in the technology set, whether you talk about Microsoft or whether you talk about other players, other intranet players, everybody is developing their tool set in that direction of being able to distribute more and more effectively. Okay, and this brings us to our third and final trend. The question, and I would love to hear your guesses in the comments. Don't guess if you already know or if you've seen this before, but about the man on the right. Yes, indeed, this is an AI generated image, and it's a mix of 4 different people. So the question that I have for you is, which 4 people are you looking at blended into single face in the one on the right? And then I guess for the one on the left, I don't know. I guess this is like absurd that you would send a child, of that age skydiving. So this, you've probably all seen this by now. Certainly, it's been like one of the big stories of the year. The way that these generative AI tools, including the AI tools for images, are just accelerating at such a pace, and they're effective enough to fool us. And that has implications for internal communications. Similarly, these generative AI models, when it comes to just text, ChatGPT, probably the biggest, the leader in the trend. I think I saw something that OpenAI has a market value now of $30 billion, something like that. And it's the fastest growing product ever in terms of the number of active users on it. So it's really unbelievable the way that this is changing the world. And yes, I'm seeing some correct guesses. I think we have 3 out of the 4 now in the comments. So well done, Dominic and Terry. And you can see here that I asked it to give us a summary of the talk that Daniel and I would have today, and in about 5 seconds, it spat out a reasonable take on what we would be talking about. So it's very impressive. And I think that this is the key question, and this is the trend, right? What does this mean for internal comms? And one of the unavoidable takeaways from this is that there will be more content and from more content creators, because this is one of the main things that people who are measuring these tools and saying what they can and can't do for us. These tools are extremely good at cutting down the amount of time that you spend drafting things. So that part of the creative process in particular, they're incredibly fast at. And if you think of the image generators, that of course is almost a apple to an orange of what you could do yesterday to what you could do now. And we think that means there's going to be more content from more content creators as a general thing. And for internal communications, this has implications. We already are in the position that, like everyone else in the world, we have to compete for attention, and that competition is really tough, and it's going to get tougher. Collaboration and communication need different homes. This is, clarifying what are the use cases of our tools and our tool set, and getting increasingly specific about getting the right tool for the job, because there's so much content that if you're trying to do everything in one place, it really just won't work. And finally, creating more relevance. So in this ocean of content, if you're sending out things that are boilerplate and only half relevant to someone and expecting that you're going to get their attention or that it's going to reach them, we think in this world of increased content creation, good luck to you.
I think that last point. There's something that is almost a trend, and it's not really a trend, but I guess something that's really important is that relevance through personalization. So when you're on an intranet, let's say, having the intranet know who you are, what your role is, where you're located, all of that type of information, and as an internal communication team or somebody that's responsible for that, being able to distribute that message or that personalized experience. Not to say that other people can't access that content, but if it's if it's something specific to your role or your department or your region or your office, then having the capabilities and the ability to sort of target that information at the right audience. So, I'm seeing the right information at the right time is again something especially from a user adoption side of things, but also from a successful internal communication strategy is something that I'm sure you're seeing, Peter, but I'm definitely seeing as a need for people to be able to almost segment out their messaging as well.
Yes, absolutely. It's on every requirements list that I look at.
Yeah.
And it's come to be expected from any technology provider that they provide, this ability to personalize, and super important.
Yeah, and the AI side of things, I mean, ChatGPT and these type of technologies. I was listening to something the other day about, you treat ChatGPT as almost like your intern. So you need to, you might have that first draft come back, but it's super important that you sort of review what comes back and then adjust it to your tone and your voice and your company culture, really, rather than just, copy and pasting. I'm sure you've seen it across socials where people are just creating content, copying it directly, and you can see it, right? You can see it, what's just been copied out of ChatGPT and pasted into a LinkedIn post or a Twitter thread or something like that. So, having, it's not going to do an end-to-end solution for you, but it is definitely a very good starting point for internal comms teams.
Yeah, totally. And if this topic is so rich about AI and how it's affecting internal communications, I will do a shameless plug. If you have not seen Frank Wolf talk about this, then just Google Frank Wolf AI internal communications and check out his talk about this. It's really excellent, talking about the implications specifically for internal communications teams. Okay, and I think for the sake of time, let me skip some of these. Okay, let's see. Here is where I meant to land. All right. So yeah, this is the third trend, right? We need to reduce that noise and we need to create relevance to break through. Alrighty. So I want to move now into the front door intranet concept. And again, for the sake of time, I'm going to do my best to keep this tight. And just jump in if you have a question or if I'm moving too quickly. The idea here is we want to present a kind of breakdown of what an intranet is. Because if you talk to people and you ask them, and you talk about the word intranet, that simple word contains many possible meanings. And so as I've had so many of these conversations with people and trying to get on the same page about intranets, and one of the frameworks that I find helpful is to differentiate the shop window part of the intranet. So this is the part where communication is happening, news is happening, you might have communities, things like that. From the libraries part, it's more like a library. You go in, you find that document that you're looking for, pull it off the shelf. That could be like for policies or if you had a knowledge database. From a third part, which is teamwork, like the pizza concept, a group of people who could eat a pizza together sitting around a table, but of course they're working virtually. They're doing work on a project, something like that. You can think of that as a separate component or element of an intranet. And in the past, the trend has been that you have one intranet that provides all of these things. And basically, what we've seen is that in many ways, thanks to Microsoft and tools like Teams, it just doesn't work. Like basically those old intranet providers who tried to do it all couldn't keep up with the feature set of more specific tools. So a great example there is like for teamwork. Microsoft Teams can just blow out of the water any of these old intranets that tried to do everything to the point where you won't use it. You're going to use Microsoft for that. And similarly with libraries, there's specialization and tools like Confluence that emerged, right? And then finally, for the shop window, one trend in the market is these front door intranets. So players and staff base, where I work, is one of them, who specialize in the shop window part specifically, and then do integrations in order to meet the other components where they are. And let's see here. Yeah, so players like Gartner now are recognizing the importance of basically this specialization and this kind of focus, and not trying to have it one tool that does all of these components, but rather get best of breed tools for each. So to this point of having best of breed tools for each, you have a few options that we wanted to walk you through. And one of those is that you can use Microsoft only. And increasingly, Microsoft is positioning itself to actually be able to serve internal communicators better and better than they did in the past. That's what I observe. And so that's definitely one path that you can consider, and a lot of companies obviously do consider. And then there are a couple of other paths that we see that I have a lot of these conversations where you're using Microsoft for part of the use cases, right, and part of the tool set, in particular the teamwork part and also the library part. But maybe the shop window part, you are getting some help of a mobile channel from a player like us or others. Because you like some of the mobile feature set that they offer, like you want a branded app, and you don't find that you're able to do that with Microsoft as easily. Or finally, you might actually go to a player who does the whole like shop window part, or a huge proportion of the shop window part of the intranet for you, and then has hooks into, again, the teamwork and the library parts. So these are, broadly speaking, the different options that folks consider, and a lot depends on your company culture, and so on. We have a question from Terry about how well Viva works as the shop window. And so I think that's a nice segue right into your section here, Daniel, talking about the new era of SharePoint. And I'm sure you'll answer Terry's question along the way here.
Absolutely. Well, I'll jump into Terry's question now. So Viva itself, for those that don't know, is a suite of products. So Viva as a whole is made up of a number of different products. One of those products, or one of those, what do we call it? We call it as a service, right? So one of those parts of Viva is what we call Viva Connections. So Viva Connections actually sits inside Microsoft Teams. Okay, so that can act as your front door or act as your shop window. So bringing your SharePoint intranet inside of Microsoft Teams, because as we were talking about before, people might start their day in Teams. So being able to have that content inside of Teams is something that's becoming more and more important. David, you spoke before about specialized applications for certain things. So Teams is very, very good for that collaborative type of stuff. So projects and departments and functions and things like that. So having, that specialized tool alongside of your shop window is, again, something that's, becoming more and more valuable to organizations. That being said, we are in a new era of SharePoint, and sort of the last probably 2 months or so has probably brought with it one of the biggest periods of time in terms of features and functionalities and changes and things like that we've seen across not just SharePoint, but across the Microsoft 365 platform. So there's been some amazing announcements and functionality that is coming to not just SharePoint, but the whole stack. And we were speaking about AI before. AI is extremely front of mind for Microsoft, and we may have heard of this thing called Copilot. So what Copilot in the context of SharePoint is going to bring with it is going to be able to help turn all of your words into, powerful tools for creating and editing SharePoint sites and pages. Traditionally, SharePoint has been thought of as something that's hard to use or create content around. But with the introduction of obviously modern SharePoint, and now with Copilot coming into SharePoint as well, you're going to be able to use your assistant, your Copilot, to be able to create some really engaging and valuable content, not just content, but entire SharePoint sites. So, turning the content creation part of SharePoint and intranets into something that's going to be really, really easy for us to be able to do as well. And it really does become your design partner as well. So having somebody to talk to, create your content, create your sites as well. The next thing that we're going to look at that's coming to SharePoint as well to create some more, engaging sites. Quite often we have requirements around, we just want SharePoint not to look like SharePoint, or, we want some more branding elements, or we want to make it, more aligned with our culture. So what is also been announced recently is the ability for us to have some more modernized approaches to creating sites and pages, and the look and feel and the user interface and things like that, because employees now have, with the consumer side of things, we've got more elevated expectations around being, engaging with company type of content. So it's not now okay to have just text-based content or email communication or things like that. We really need to have that engaging types of content to deliver and distribute to our employees, and get that reach across the many channels that we were talking about before. So making a news article or an update more engaging through imagery or through multimedia videos, or even audio these days as well, is becoming more and more important. So what is coming, as you can see on the screen here, is it actually doesn't look like SharePoint, and it does look like a consumer-based type of pages and intranet as well. The next thing that is coming, and it's more aligned to that brand and the look and feel and the culture as well. And this is where a lot of intranet products had a differentiation point around SharePoint and a product, is around branding and making it, bringing your own fonts and colors and color palettes and things like that. So you can see on the screen here that potentially later this year, I don't know the exact dates right now, but there will be the ability for you to have your own brand center inside of SharePoint, inside of Microsoft 365. So you can specify things like fonts and colors and your logos and all of those design elements that you weren't able to do previously. And we're going to be able to then reuse all of these elements across different sites, across different hubs, so that you can provide these guardrails to your organization to have that brand authenticity as well. I just mentioned video before. So again, the importance of having different types of communication. So not just text-based, as we tend to see with a lot of internal communication, but being able to bring in video and have that easy to distribute, not only to distribute, but easy to create. So an example could potentially be a CEO corner or something like that. Traditionally, we've seen a newsletter or a CEO update that is sent out as text, as email. But now with the introduction of video throughout SharePoint powered by Microsoft Stream, all CEOs and executive levels are now tending and leaning towards a more personalized type of messaging and communication around video. Being able to just get your phone out and record that update and post that update via multimedia, via video, is again just a different medium and a more engaging, personalized medium to get that message and get that information out to the rest of the organization. So having this playback through Microsoft Stream experience, it has gone through some amazing transformation recently. Classic Streams disappearing, and now we're moving to a newer version of that. So that's again another way for organizations to be able to get and reach more people and create some more engaging content.
Daniel,
yes,
we did have a couple questions from the chat. I think a couple of them are more for me around gaps from O365 and why you might bring in a third party. I could speak to those. There was one, what is the difference from SharePoint communication sites that we are currently using as our intranet foundation? That sounds like a current state Microsoft to future state. That maybe you can take that one, and then I'll take the
sure.
other.
So, well, in SharePoint, we've got two types of sites, site templates, I guess we'll call them. So we've got a communication site, which is typically used for intranet type of scenarios. And then we've got SharePoint team sites. So SharePoint team sites are more collaborative by nature. So they're the sites that sit behind Microsoft Teams as well, right? So it's where a team or a group of people come together to get their work done, typically more collaborative, whereas a communication site tends to lean itself more to a publishing and the front door type of content that we were talking about. So news, branding, central policies, procedures, that type of content lends itself to more communication types of sites.
Cool. Thanks, Daniel. And yeah, I'll try to take this one quickly about basically, you know, why do many companies consider a third party? And I would say the main reasons, in a lot of cases, it has to do with the mobile, like the extent to which the organization cares about reaching specifically frontline workers. That problem, the problem of reaching them, it turns out, is a very tricky one. And there's a sort of secret sauce of getting things like the branding and getting the app into the public stores in a way that people can get the app on their phone very smoothly and in a familiar way that some companies are persuaded is an advantage of going with a third party like Staffbase. We provide fully branded apps for all of our customers, for example. So it could be that, like specifically channels like mobile or email, for example. We help internal communicators to send on an email channel. Microsoft themselves is actually a customer of ours for our email product. So it could be that there's a channel thing that's going on that pushes the company in a third party direction. Or I would say the other side of the coin is it has to do with internal communications itself as separated from, let's say, the IT department at the company, and the way that a third party can really focus the user experience on the internal communicator. And that could be things like having an editorial calendar that helps your internal communications team to collaborate. It could be all kinds of little differences in the admin experience that are catered and focused specifically for that persona and that department and that role of internal communications. Okay, and I think that, thank you for the questions, Terry and Yvette and Dominic. I think that gives you a flavor, right? And if you wanted to know more, obviously, we'd be happy to talk to you. Come over to staffbase.com and we'll tell you all about what we think some of the differences are, or what our customers tell us why they went with us. Okay, and then Dominic asks, any practical tips or hacks for making the most out of M365 applications like Teams and SharePoint alongside front door intranet to create a seamless and impactful internal communication ecosystem? Well, I think, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of hacks and a lot of tips along the way. I think one of the most important ideas that I've ever learned in being in the industry now for about 6 years has to do with the focus on personas in doing this work, and that you really begin by understanding who it is that we're trying to reach and where are they. So you don't begin with, technology and features. You begin with your people and segmenting them into persona groups, like a manageable number, right? 3-4 different persona groups, and then having a strategy for how you'll reach them, and then find a technology that will help you to do that. I think that is like an energetic thing that I see companies transform from the way they were doing it before to the way that, when the company has a really successful project, it tends to be that kind of cultural focus and point of emphasis on the way that they're thinking employee personas first as an important shift.
Yeah, I think that's really important with any of these types of projects or initiatives, is to reverse engineer that, right? So start from the end result first. Who do we need to reach? Where are they working? What devices are they on? There may, it may mean that we don't need all of these things. We may not need a front door intranet. We may not need Microsoft Teams. We may not need SharePoint. It really depends on what the outcomes are. So, if SharePoint and Microsoft Teams are enough to achieve what we're trying to do, then, there's just being able to then not, focus more on the outcomes that we're trying to get to. before sort of looking at the technology and what what can potentially be done. I mean, everything can be done inside of M365. It's just a matter of choosing the right path to get to the right outcomes.
Yeah, really strongly agree with you there, Daniel. Yeah, so I think we managed to, as far as I can tell, and let us know in the comments if not, address the outstanding questions. And I know we have just a couple minutes left. If you had any other questions, please fire away. And otherwise, Daniel, do you have any parting thoughts you'd like to leave our audience with?
Well, in terms of it's a super exciting time for the intranet space. You've seen with the things that are coming down the line from Microsoft and from not just SharePoint, but from the Microsoft 365 platform as a whole. I don't think I've seen. I mean, I've been in this space for close to 20 years or so now, and I don't think I've seen as much capabilities and functionality and value coming to the platform itself, especially from a communication side. We didn't even there's some things coming around what's called Viva Amplify. So I would highly recommend people have a look at that as well. From a corporate comms perspective, we're talking about channels before, being able to create a piece of content and distribute that across different channels is, obviously super important. So there's so much stuff that is coming. So it's really important not to get, I guess, overwhelmed with everything, but start, as we spoke before, start with what you're trying to do. What outcomes are you trying to achieve with your internal communication strategy? And then how do we match and marry up the technology to achieve what you're looking to do?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Daniel. And we had a question from Terry that I'm wondering if you can help with, which is about do you have any resources that you go to read up on what's coming for internal comms from the Microsoft world?
I have many locations, but the tech community in Microsoft. So if you just Google the Microsoft tech community, they have a lot of blogs and updates that come out from that. Shameless plug to my daily newsletter. I do post out a lot of that through there too. So you could jump on that. But the Microsoft stuff, they're very active on the tech community, posting out updates through there, and also on their socials as well. They're starting to push out a lot of stuff on socials.
Great. And we had this question about reflections, advice on Yammer or Viva Engage interactions. And I can take that from a staff-based side. I've talked to a lot of organizations with Yammer across the years, and some of them have communities that really love Yammer, and it is a well-used tool. Even in those cases, though, it tends to be relatively small compared to the overall company size. So what I'd say there is we have staff-based projects that have 80% plus adoption and 75% plus weekly active usage. And that's not the best customer. That's a lot of the really good ones achieve that kind of scale of adoption and usage. Whereas in my experience, Yammer tends to be nowhere near, a majority of your employees that you're actually reaching and are engaging, even though at those companies that I have met that fell in love with it, it was a big step forward for them from where they were before that. So that would be the staff-based experience.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of organisations and people have a love-hate relationship with Yammer, or now Viva Engage. Obviously, it's just been rebranded, but that you'll see that the convergence of Viva Engage and through the Viva platform as a whole. I mean, things. We were speaking before about Viva Connections. So there's a dashboard, a feed, a Viva Connections or a Viva feed that now is embeddable into a SharePoint page and also into Viva Connections, obviously, that then brings in all this content. So I'm seeing maybe it is the rebrand, or maybe it's not, but I'm seeing it at an executive level a more interest around having Viva Engage as part of an internal communication strategy. We've got, almost we've got storylines. So a functionality of Viva Engage now is storylines. So you're able to follow people and that type of thing. And you mentioned the LinkedIn post at the start of the webinar. That type of functionality now is coming inside. So having, as an executive or as a person of influence inside of a company, being able to have your own storyline and communicate and people follow and that type of thing through Viva Engage, and then having that content surfacing in through your intranet, in through your feed now is, again, from an internal comms perspective, becoming increasingly valuable to not just executives, but people across the org.
Brilliant. Okay. I'm recognizing that I believe we're just a couple minutes over, so I'm going to make a final reading recommendation for everyone. The Clearbox Intranet and Employee Experience Platforms report. Don't be scared. It is 770 pages long. It is free, and it is an unbiased third party. So these, as far as I know in the industry, the folks at Clearbox Consulting have really mastered the comprehensive analysis of this kind of platform. And they go into all kinds of detail. They show you product. They give you good advice on strengths and weaknesses for the different players. And they do it in a way that's really clear and comparable, like you see here in how they're scoring across 10 different scenarios. So in any case, you'll see the download link in the slides when we send them around, or check them out. Just Google Clearbox Intranet report. And yeah, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Daniel, anything else that you'd like to leave our audience with?
No, just wanted to thank everybody for jumping on. Hope it was valuable to everybody. It's, as I said before, it's certainly an exciting time around technology and internal communications. I know we didn't get time for a dedicated Q&A, but connect with me, connect with Peter. More than happy to take any questions that you do have. You can should be fairly easy to find on LinkedIn, so just jump over there and connect there.
Thank you so much. Huge thanks, Peter and Daniel, expert insights, and to all of our participants in your engagement. It's really helped bring this session a little bit closer together. Thank you as well, Peter. I've definitely started reading some of the Clearbox reports as well, so definitely go into that as well. Before we sign off, I would like to make you aware of another great learning opportunity coming up. We are partnering with IABC for a fascinating webinar called Strategic Communications in an Age of Increased Noise, Channels and Business Complexity. That event's taking place on July 19th at 12 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. You'll hear from communications heavy hitters like Martin Alpines, Colette Betts, and our own Jeff Corbin from Staffbase. As a token of appreciation for our customers and attendees of today's webinar, we will send across a complimentary ticket by using the promo code Staffbase. And these are normally ticketed at around $50. So it's a great opportunity to jump in and learn. An email invitation with the registration link will be sent out soon. So please do keep an eye out for it. Thank you again for spending your time with us today. I look forward to catching up with you at our next webinar. Until then, keep communicating. Stay safe and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all. Bye.